Let one god be slaughtered. With his flesh and his blood, let Nintu mix clay, that God and man may be thoroughly mixed together in the clay, so that we may hear the drumbeat forever. These chilling words etched into the clay tablets of the Atrahasis epic nearly 4,000 years ago whisper a disturbing possibility about our origins. Why does the human genome contain sudden, inexplicable mutations that separate us violently from our primate cousins? Why do the world's oldest civilizations all share the distinct memory of gods who descended from the sky not to guide us but to engineer us? And could the so-called junk DNA inside your cells actually be a dormant code left behind by architects from another world? Throughout history, we have searched for the missing link in the fossil record. But perhaps we have been looking in the wrong place, for the answer may not lie in the dust of the earth, but in the spiraling staircase of our own biology. What follows are highly controversial propositions that challenge the foundations of anthropology and theology alike, but as Aristotle once wisely noted, it is the mark of an educated mind to entertain a thought without accepting it. To understand what might be hidden in our blood, we must travel back to the cradle of civilization, to ancient Sumer, where the story of humanity does not begin with a primitive struggle for survival, but with a sudden, sophisticated explosion of culture. The Sumerian king list describes a time when kingship was lowered from heaven. But before kings, there were the gods. The Enuma Elish and the Atrahasis epic describe a period when the Anunnaki, those who from heaven to earth came, toiled on this planet. They were not mystical spirits, but physical beings who grew tired. The lesser gods, the Igigi, rebelled against their labor, casting their tools into the fire and surrounding the house of Enlil, the commander. It was in this moment of crisis that the solution was proposed by Enki, the master scientist of the gods. He suggested creating a primitive worker, a Luluamelu, to carry the yoke of the gods. But there is a disturbing detail in the translation of these tablets, a specific reference to a mark placed upon this new creation, something hidden deep within the structure of the creature that we will reveal later in this broadcast. A detail that modern genetics is only now beginning to uncover. Mainstream archaeology views these texts as metaphorical attempts by early humans to explain their place in a harsh natural hierarchy, seeing the clay as a symbol of our mortality and the breath of God as our consciousness. However, the late Zecharia Sitchin and proponents of the ancient astronaut theory argue that we must read these texts not as myths, but as records. If we accept the controversial premise that the Anunnaki were flesh and blood entities from a planet within our own solar system, possibly the elusive Nibiru, then the clay mentioned in the texts takes on a different meaning. It becomes the biological material of the earth, the hominid stock, and the blood of the god becomes the donor genetic material used to upgrade a primitive beast into a sentient worker. This radical interpretation suggests that Homo sapiens is not a product of slow natural selection, but a genetically modified organism. Just as Enki shared forbidden knowledge with the first humans, this channel seeks to share investigations that challenge the official narratives of history. So if this pursuit of hidden truths resonates with you, consider subscribing to join us as we continue to decipher the past. This theory of genetic intervention finds a strange ally in the unexplained anomaly of the sudden emergence of Homo sapiens. In evolutionary terms, humans appeared almost overnight. We possess a brain capacity and a linguistic ability that bears no logical continuity with the slow progression of earlier hominids. The Bible itself echoes this in Genesis, stating, "Let us make man in our image, after our likeness." Note the plural us. Who were they speaking to? The Hebrew word used is Elohim, a plural term often translated as God in the singular, yet implies a collective. But this interpretation divides researchers sharply. Some see the plural Elohim as a majestic plural of the divine, while others see it as a council of biological entities. What do you think? Does the plural nature of the Creator in ancient texts suggest a team of designers? Share your perspective in the comments below. But if we were engineered, where is the factory? In the mines of southern Africa, archaeologists have discovered mining operations dating back tens of thousands of years, far predating any known civilization capable of such industry. The Anglo-American Corporation, a modern mining giant, found evidence of ancient mining at depths that suggest a massive scale of extraction. The Sumerian texts refer to the Abzu, the land of the mines, where Enki oversaw operations. Is it possible that the cradle of humanity is actually the cradle of a labor force? But let us return to that disturbing detail mentioned earlier, the mark in the design. For decades, scientists have puzzled over human chromosome 2. Unlike our primate cousins who have 48 chromosomes, humans have only 46. It appears that at some point in our distant past, two ancestral ape chromosomes fused together to form our second largest chromosome. This fusion event is the smoking gun of human evolution. It includes telomeres, which are usually found at the ends of chromosomes right in the middle, and a vestigial centromere. Natural evolutionists argued this was a random, lucky mutation that swept through the population. However, genetic interventionists ask a different question. Could this fusion be the sewing together described in the Atrahasis epic? Could this be the precise moment the Anunnaki spliced their own genetic code with that of Homo erectus? It is a biological edit so clean, so precise, that even Francis Crick, the co-discoverer of the DNA double helix, once suggested the possibility of directed panspermia, the idea that life on Earth was seeded by advanced intelligence. While we explore the science, we must not ignore the cultural echoes. The Popol Vuh of the Maya describes the gods creating humans from mud, then wood, and finally maize, in a process of trial and error that sounds suspiciously like a laboratory procedure. In Greek mythology, Prometheus molds men out of clay and gives them fire, a symbol of intellect against the will of Zeus. These stories are separated by oceans and millennia, yet they tell the same narrative. We were made, not born. We have identified connections between Sumerian, biblical, and Mesoamerican creation myths. But do you know of other cultures with similar stories of manufactured humans? Share those myths in the comments as we build a global map of these memories. We will explore the specific technological descriptions of these birth chambers in future documentaries, so be sure to subscribe to follow these revelations as we continue this journey. The texts describe the house of Shimti, or the house where the wind of life is breathed in. Cylinder seals depict Enki and the mother goddess Ninhursag surrounded by flasks and vessels. They speak of the 7 birth goddesses who assisted in the creation. Is this a primitive description of in vitro fertilization and surrogacy? The descriptions of the flaws in the first humans, beings who could not hold back urine, beings with weak limbs, read like a logbook of failed genetic experiments before the perfect model was achieved. However, we must address the critical perspective. Mainstream academia vehemently rejects the translation of Sumerian terms like exalted rocket or genetic double helix. They argue that Sitchin and his followers are engaging in pareidolia, seeing complex modern technology in stylized ancient art. They point out that the fusion of chromosome 2, while remarkable, is not impossible in nature and has been observed in other species. They argue that attributing our achievements to aliens robs humanity of its own agency and ingenuity. But there is another layer to this mystery. If we were created as slaves, why are we now the masters of the earth? The ancient texts speak of a conflict between Enlil, who viewed humans as noisy, disposable chattel, and Enki, who grew fond of his creation. This brings us to the narrative of the Great Flood. Enlil wished to wipe out humanity, to reset the experiment. But Enki instructed Atrahasis, or Noah, to build a vessel to save the genetic seed. There is a tablet, the Era Epos, which we hinted at earlier, that casts a dark shadow on this rivalry. It suggests that Enlil's anger wasn't just about noise, but about the fact that humans were becoming too much like the gods. We were reproducing too quickly, living too long, and grasping at knowledge that was not meant for us. The mark we discussed, chromosome 2, gave us the hardware for intelligence, but did it also contain a kill switch? Some theorists propose that the non-coding DNA, the 97% of our genome previously dismissed as junk, contains the programming for dormant abilities, telepathy, self-healing, extended longevity, that were deliberately deactivated by our creators to keep us subservient. Remember the mark we mentioned at the start? While chromosome 2 represents the fusion that made us smart, the junk DNA might represent the shackles that keep us contained. Modern science is only now beginning to realize that this non-coding DNA plays a crucial role in regulating gene expression. It is the software that runs the hardware. If the Anunnaki simply turned off the switches that allowed for the years of the patriarchs, the nearly 1,000-year lifespans described in the Bible and the Sumerian king list, are we then living as diminished versions of what we were meant to be? No one has satisfactorily explained why human cells have a theoretical lifespan far longer than our actual biological limit. Can you think of an alternative explanation for why we age so rapidly compared to the gods of old? Creative theories are welcome in the comments. As we stand on the brink of our own genetic revolution, with CRISPR technology allowing us to edit the genome, we are becoming the Anunnaki. We are on the verge of creating our own Lulu Amelu, whether biological or artificial. This brings us full circle to the ultimate question. If we carry the genes of the gods, do we also carry their responsibilities and perhaps their distinct flaws? The duality of human nature, Our capacity for immense love and creation, alongside our drive for war and destruction, mirrors the very conflict between Enki and Enlil. Are we fighting a proxy war of ancient extraterrestrial brothers within the helix of our own DNA? The evidence remains fragmented, hidden in the silence of the desert and the microscopic coding of our cells. Whether we are the children of the stars or the children of the earth, the mystery of our origin defines our future. If the Anunnaki really existed, and if we are their hybrid offspring, would that change your view of your own soul and purpose? Reflect on this and share your thoughts in the comments. We are a species with amnesia, awakening in a vast universe, holding a map written in our own blood that we are only just learning to read. Until next time, keep looking up, but don't forget to look within. If the software is in our blood, the hardware is scattered across the earth in stone. We must now turn our gaze from the microscope to the landscape, for the Anunnaki did not just leave their mark in our genes. They left their fingerprints in granite. Mainstream archaeology asks us to believe that with copper chisels and hemp ropes, our ancestors shaped stones weighing over 1,000 tons with the precision of a laser. But there is a glaring inconsistency in this narrative, a chronological paradox that the textbooks ignore. In almost every ancient culture, Egypt, Peru, Baalbek, Sumer, the earliest stonework is the most advanced, and the later work is inferior. Civilization did not evolve, it devolved. This is the hallmark of a legacy technology. Knowledge that was inherited, used, and then forgotten. Consider the megaliths of Baalbek in Lebanon. Here lies the stone of the pregnant woman, a block of limestone weighing an estimated 1,200 tons. Beside it, archaeologists recently uncovered an even larger block, weighing 1,850 tons. To move such a stone today would require the combined effort of the world's most powerful mobile cranes. Yet we are told the Romans moved these stones. But if you look closely at the foundation of the Temple of Jupiter, you see a distinct difference. The Roman columns are ornate, beautiful, and manageable. They sit atop a platform of colossal, featureless megaliths that no Roman engineer ever claimed to cut. This is the Trilithon. The local legends do not credit the Romans. They say these platforms were built by the giants before the flood to serve as a landing deck. A landing deck for what? Let's open a loop here that we will close later regarding the specific acoustics of these sites. There is a reason these stones are granite and limestone, materials high in quartz crystal. Keep that in mind. We will return to the concept of resonance and sound technology shortly. But first, we must cross the ocean to the Andes. In Pumapunku and Tiahuanaco, located at an altitude where trees do not grow and oxygen is thin, we find the most baffling stonework on the planet. Here, diorite, a stone harder than steel, was not just cut, it was machined. The H-blocks of Pumapunku possess perfect 90-degree internal angles, drill holes with consistent millimeter depth, and modular designs that suggest mass production. These are not temples, they are components. If you were to show these blocks to a modern engineer without context, they would identify them as prefabricated parts for a larger industrial machine. Sitchin proposed that Tiahuanaco was a processing plant for the gold mine in Africa, a metallurgical center controlled by the Anunnaki chief scientist Enki. The local Aymara legends speak of the creator god Viracocha, who came from the sky and carved the stone with heavenly fire. Is heavenly fire a primitive description of directed energy tools? When we analyze the tool marks on these stones, we do not find the erratic scratching of a handheld chisel. We find the smooth glazed surface characteristic of extreme heat or ultrasonic cutting. This connects back to the shamir mentioned in Jewish folklore, a worm or tool used by Solomon to cut the stones of the temple without noise. Was the shamir a piece of Anunnaki technology? But the most compelling evidence is not just in how the stones were cut, but in who watched over them. We mentioned earlier that we would discuss the connections between disparate cultures. Look at the handbags. In the stone reliefs of ancient Sumer, the Anunnaki are depicted holding a mysterious object that looks like a purse or handbag. Cross the world to the Olmecs in Mexico, the same handbag. Go to Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, the oldest temple in the world, the same handbag carved into Pillar 43. Go to the Maori of New Zealand, the same symbol. How did cultures separated by thousands of miles and thousands of years depict the exact same device in the hands of their gods? Mainstream scholars call it a weight or a symbol of the cosmos. But a functional analysis suggests something more practical. If these beings were indeed manipulating the atmosphere or the genetics of the planet, could this handbag be a portable power source, a battery, or perhaps a gene bank containing the very seeds of life they were planting? The uniformity of this symbol is a smoking gun for a global coordinated presence. It implies that the gods were not local hallucinations but global administrators. And speaking of administration, let's return to the Great Pyramid of Giza. We are told it is a tomb for a pharaoh, yet no mummy was ever found, no hieroglyphs were originally inscribed inside, and its dimensions encode the circumference of the earth, the speed of light, and the golden ratio. Now remember the loop we opened about resonance? It's time to close it. Recent studies have shown that the Great Pyramid, particularly the King's Chamber with its granite coffers, is capable of conducting electromagnetic energy. The specific dimensions of the Grand Gallery resonate to a frequency that can alter human consciousness and theoretically stabilize the planetary grid. If the Anunnaki needed a power plant to sustain their operations or their communication with the home world, the pyramid was not a monument to death. It was a machine of life. Christopher Dunn's Giza power plant theory aligns terrifyingly well with the descriptions of the Ekur in Sumerian texts, described not as a tomb but as a mountain that pulses with a net that spans the heavens. But there is a darker implication to this technology. If they could build machines to resonate with the earth, could they also build machines to resonate with us? We previously discussed the pineal gland. It is composed of microcrystals, calcite and magnetite. It is a piezoelectric antenna. If the pyramids and megalithic sites were broadcasting a specific frequency, were they broadcasting to us? Were these sites designed to keep the human worker population in a state of docile subservience, a planetary frequency fence? This brings us to a disturbing anomaly in the archaeological record, the elongated skulls. Found in Paracas, Peru, and also in the Black Sea region, these skulls are not merely the result of head binding. Head binding deforms the shape but does not increase the cranial volume. The Paracas skulls have a cranial volume up to 25% larger than a modern human and are 60% heavier. They lack the sagittal suture, the joint that fuses the two parietal plates of the skull. This is a genetic trait, not a modification. Genetic testing on these skulls has revealed mtDNA mutations unknown in any human, primate, or animal known so far. Are these the remains of the demigods, the hybrid rulers placed in charge by the Anunnaki to oversee the human population? The priest kings? This would explain the divine right of kings that has plagued human history. The obsession with blue blood and preserving the bloodline. They were trying to preserve the Anunnaki genetics against the dilution of human DNA. This caste system wasn't political, it was biological. And where are they now? The sudden disappearance of these advanced civilizations, the collapse of the Maya, the abandonment of Teotihuacan, the silence of Sumer suggests a scheduled departure. Or perhaps a forced evacuation. The texts speak of the winds of evil that swept over Sumer, a radioactive cloud that killed people in the streets but left the building standing. Sitchin interpreted this as the fallout from a nuclear skirmish between the Anunnaki factions. We find vitrified sand turned to green glass by extreme heat, in the deserts of Libya, in the forts of Scotland, and in the ruins of Mohenjo-Daro in India. In Mohenjo-Daro, skeletons were found lying in the streets holding hands, as if struck by sudden doom, with radiation levels comparable to Hiroshima. The Mahabharata describes a single projectile charged with all the power of the universe, an incandescent column of smoke and flame as bright as the thousand suns. We have assumed these are metaphors, but what if they are eyewitness accounts of tactical nuclear warfare? If the gods destroyed themselves or left in ruins, we are the survivors of a war we do not remember. We are the orphans of a cosmic conflict, left with the tools but not the instruction manual. We have spent the last 5,000 years trying to rebuild the technology of the gods. What is our internet if not a digital version of the tablets of destiny? What are our rockets if not crude imitations of the Shems? But before we move to our final conclusion, there is one last crucial piece of evidence: the gold. Why gold? Why did they travel light years for a soft conductive metal? We use gold for electronics and radiation shielding in spacecraft. The Sumerian texts say they needed gold to suspend in the atmosphere of Nibiru to save their dying planet. But there is a biological use for monoatomic gold. In ancient Egypt, the mfkast, or white powder of gold, was eaten by the pharaohs to achieve longevity and higher consciousness. Is it possible that the gold mining wasn't just for their planet, but for their immortality? And did they cut us off from this supply to ensure we remain mortal? We have covered the stone, the blood, and the wars. In the final segment of our journey, we will synthesize this into a terrifying but hopeful conclusion. We will ask the ultimate question: if they left, are they coming back? And if they return, will they see us as their children or as a failed experiment that needs to be reset once more. The cycle of time is closing. The ancient calendars all point to a return. Prepare yourself, for the final revelation may not be in the sky, but in the mirror. We have traced the fingerprints of the gods from the double helix of our DNA to the megalithic foundations of our ancient temples. We have seen the evidence of a species with amnesia, waking up in the wreckage of a history we were told to ignore. But a documentary about the past is useless unless it illuminates the future. The final piece of this puzzle is not buried in the sand. It is written in the stars, and it concerns the most terrifying implication of the ancient astronaut theory, the return. If history is cyclical, as the Maya, the Hindus, and the Sumerians believed, then the departure of the Anunnaki was not a goodbye. It was merely the end of a shift. The Sumerians tracked time not just in years, but in shars, the orbital period of Nibiru, roughly 3,600 Earth years. If we align the chronologies of the ancient texts with our current position in the precession of the equinoxes, we arrive at a startling realization. We are living in the twilight of an age, the transition point that the ancients predicted would mark the return of the Shems to our skies. But why would they return? To understand this, we must look at what is happening to us right now. We are approaching a technological singularity. For the first time since our creation, we are on the verge of becoming the creators. We are decoding the genome, manipulating the very clay that Enki once mixed. We are building artificial intelligence, a new form of Lulu Amelu, fashioned not from biological mud, but from silicon and code. We are building neural networks in our own image, just as we were built in theirs. This creates a cosmic resonance. Are we unwittingly preparing the planet for their arrival, terraforming the Earth through climate change and digital infrastructure to suit their needs? Or more disturbingly, are we becoming a threat? In the Atrahasis epic, Enlil sought to destroy humanity because we became too noisy, too numerous, and too intelligent. Look at our world today. We have split the atom, we have cluttered the orbit with satellites, and we are broadcasting our existence into the deep void. We are no longer the quiet workers in the gold mines of the Abzu. We are a civilization that has found the matches and is playing with fire. This brings us to the phenomenon that governments around the world are finally acknowledging: UAPs, or unidentified anomalous phenomena. For decades, the presence of these objects was ridiculed, but now, with Pentagon disclosures and high-ranking military testimony, the reality is undeniable. Objects defying the laws of physics, moving from space to sea without a sonic boom, observing our nuclear installations. The skeptics call it foreign technology. The believers call it extraterrestrials. But the ancient astronaut theory offers a third, more nuanced option. It is the landlords checking on the tenants. If the Anunnaki never truly left, but merely withdrew to a position of observation, the watchers described in the Book of Enoch, then these craft are not visitors. They are the automated sentinels of a civilization that considers Earth its property. They are monitoring our progress, or perhaps our expiration date. Consider the Hopi prophecies of the blue star Kachina, which heralds the end of the fourth world and the purification of the earth. Consider the book of Revelation, which describes a new Jerusalem descending from the sky, a massive city describing dimensions that fit the description of a mothership more than a metropolis. These are not disparate hallucinations. They are the same event viewed through different cultural lenses. The Day of the Judgment may not be a mystical assessment of your morality by a spiritual entity, but a practical assessment of the crop by the harvest managers. Have we preserved the genetic seed? Have we maintained the planet? Or have we become a cancer that needs to be excised before the next cycle begins? This is the fear that haunted the ancients, the fear that the gods would return not to save us but to reset the simulation. However, there is a hopeful path, one that requires us to close the loop we opened at the very beginning of this broadcast. Remember the drumbeat of the heart, the mix of God and man. The Gnostics, a sect of early mystics persecuted by the church, believed that while the archons rulers created our bodies, they could not create our spark. They believed that a true unknown God, one higher than Enki or Enlil, hid a divine seed within humanity that even the Anunnaki did not understand. This is the epinoia, the power of imagination and consciousness. If the Anunnaki trapped us in a genetic cage, they accidentally locked the key inside with us. The very thing they feared, our rapid evolution, is our salvation. We have the capacity for empathy, for art, for love, and for transcendence, traits that the text suggests the Anunnaki themselves often lacked, consumed as they were by petty jealousies and wars. We are in many ways the superior version. We are the hybrids who survived. The 97% of junk DNA we discussed earlier is waking up. Science calls it epigenetics, the ability of our environment and consciousness to alter the expression of our genes. By expanding our consciousness, by refusing to be mere workers in a system of consumerism and division, we are hacking the code. We are turning the switches back on. The return of the Anunnaki might not be a physical invasion, but an internal activation. The second coming might be the awakening of the dormant DNA within you. This is why the control systems of the world are so desperate to keep you in a state of fear, distraction, and low vibration. A fearful humanity is a slave race. An awakened humanity is a partner in the galactic community. We must also consider the possibility that the gods are waiting for us to grow up. The silence of the universe might be the silence of a parent waiting for the child to solve the puzzle on their own. We have reached the stage of adolescence as a species. We are rebellious, destructive, but filled with potential. The test of the 21st century is not whether we can build better machines, but whether we can build a better ethics to guide them. If we can survive our own technology, if we can heal the divide between the nations, which are essentially the modern tribes of Enlil and Enki, we may prove that we are worthy of the inheritance. As we conclude this investigation, remember the tablet we mentioned hours ago, the one that changed everything. It is the realization that the gods are not immortal. They die, they fight, they make mistakes. The Sumerian texts mourn the death of gods. This means they are not the ultimate authority. They are just older travelers on the same path. We do not need to worship them. We need to understand them so we can understand ourselves. The hierarchy is an illusion. The mark in your genes is not a brand of ownership. It is a signature of potential. So I leave you with this final philosophical provocation, the question that defines our existence. If the Anunnaki landed tomorrow and they offered you a choice to return to the comfort of the Garden of Eden as an eternal cared-for servant, or to remain in the harsh, uncertain freedom of the wilderness as a free human being, which would you choose? Would you trade your autonomy for security? Because that is the choice we face every day, even without the spaceships. The story of the Anunnaki is not just ancient history. It is the story of right now. It is the story of power, genetics, and the fight for the human soul. The clay is still wet, the wheel is still turning, and the pen is in your hand. We will continue to explore these depths in future documentaries, diving into the specific technologies of the pyramids and the lost continents. If you are ready to continue this journey and uncover the rest of the forbidden history, make sure you are subscribed and have the notification bell turned on. You are the resistance against the amnesia. Thank you for watching Astroway. Keep questioning the narrative, keep looking at the stars. And remember, the truth is not out there, it is in you.